Hello, everybody. Welcome to Productivity Mastery Podcast, the podcast that is bringing you some of the most accomplished, inspiring, productive leaders. And we try to discuss and find out what are their strategies to actually win at certain areas at which they are really, really good at. And I'm super excited to finally have a chance to talk to Diana Alice Florescu. She's somebody that is really fascinating and inspiring. She's multiple business owner. She's always on projects on different kind of great initiatives. She's a board member and part of the one of the leading conferences in the region, Wolf Summit, and she's just a productive bee. How are you, Diana, this morning?
Good morning, Storian. I'm very well, thank you. I'm actually in Warsaw right now, and it's finally sunny after a long rainy week or season, actually. I think we haven't seen sun in a while. I'm looking forward to Easter. It's our Easter this weekend, so I'm going back home. Home is Romania to see my family, so really excited. How are you?
Fantastic. I'm great, and I'm just kind of remembering when we met for the first time, and that was
Oh, I remember very well.
we took a ride. We took a ride. Diana and I took a ride as we were both moderators slash speakers at the latest podium conference in Maribor, and somehow our flights were at the same time. So we were um, we
We
got
met in
a
Vienna, right? I think
was it
we
Vienna?
flew to Vienna and
Mm.
then we didn't know each other at the time. And I was in the airport and I was trying to like match a WhatsApp image to like whoever I was seeing in the airport. And then we had a really fun ride from Vienna to Maribor. Yeah, it was last year. I think it was actually last year around the same time, almost a year ago, right? May.
Yeah, pretty much, and I think also it was interesting also to see the efficiency of our communication, right? We exchanged some ideas, what's going on, projects, and so on. At some point, both of
Yeah.
us took our laptops and started, getting back to business from the car. So that was also like, okay, I get her.
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
she's
yeah.
really focused. She's really committed. But hey, Diana, why don't you give us a bit of an overview about your story? Uh, I I'm very fascinated by the fact that at the age that you're at, and you're still a young leader.
We're not
uh,
supposed to say that.
I know, right? But if you think about it for the time being, you've accomplished a lot of things, and that's really fascinating. And people look at LinkedIn and all these kind of fancy pictures. You're speaking at conferences, you're smashing it. But I know that it's the story is not just the sunshine and roses. And I'm curious to hear more about the reality of the story. So maybe lead us through your humble beginnings and what it really took you to be where you are today.
Sure. It's quite difficult to actually think where to start. But what you said about LinkedIn and pictures and everything, I think it's very easy to judge, people by their covers. And I think LinkedIn it really doesn't portray how our lives actually work. And there is a lot of struggle and there is a lot of moments when you kind of just lose yourself. So yeah, it hasn't been easy. Let's just put it this way. So where to start? It is true that I am originally from Romania, and I think it's what we call ourselves the first generation to actually leave the country in my family, study abroad, and I guess just having a dream of kind of working on brands and businesses that I like, as opposed to following a more conventional path. So I didn't really grow up in an entrepreneurial family, if you like. We don't have a family business in that case. So for me, being an entrepreneur is more of a mindset and is something that it can be taught rather than you're born this way. There's always this philosophy: are the entrepreneurs born, or are they actually taught, right? So I left Romania when I was quite young. I went to study in the UK. I studied in Germany for a while as well. But I realized to actually be able to live in the UK and to remain in the UK after studies, I had to start working obviously from the very beginning. Um, Humble beginnings, as you said. I think in the first 3 months, the moment I landed in the UK, I just went down the Oxford Street, tried to find a job to be able to pay my rent and to be able to finish my studies, right? So I ended up at one point having 2, 3 jobs doing my studies. I was a sales assistant at Gap, right? So that's how I started. And to be honest, I look back and I would never change a single thing. I really enjoyed that time and I was happy and it was probably the best time of my life, to be honest. So when I was finishing my undergraduate degree, I had a massive opportunity to work for a startup. It was a young startup, and the one of the founders I was working with, Alison, she came with a lot of experience working in the industry for about 10, 15 years. She was an inspiring woman. If she listens, it's basically because of our work back then that drew me to work in startups all the way up till now. And I really enjoyed the time. I learned a lot from her. And as I was graduating, I realized actually I don't want to work for a big marketing agency. I come from a marketing background, right? So I just want to do my own thing. And it probably sounded crazy at the time because you're just graduating, you don't have a lot of experience, but I think you just have to try. So as I was leaving uni, I started my own company. We had a small team. It was a food tech startup. We're trying to kind of play a role in decreasing food waste, which is a massive problem still in the UK. And there's a lot of amazing brands doing this. And it went well for a while. We ran it for about a couple of years. We grew the team to about 7 people. We had restaurants on board. We even won the Lloyd's Banking People Choice, which was a pretty big achievement at the time, which meant people loved the idea, people believed in the idea. The problem for me was always access to the tech talent and the team. So after a couple of years, I didn't feel like the business was going the direction that I wanted. So I parked the business, and that experience propelled me into working with Startup Bootcamp, which is one of the largest global network of accelerators. It's present in about 20 countries, and I love that because I was able to interact with so many startups and founders and trying to understand their story and to learn from them as well. So I led the global marketing department for about a couple of years. I also kind of roll up my sleeves and run a program, operational wise in Qatar on sports tech. And then I decided to join Raymaking, a venture building studio company, which is also based in London. So that experience really, really helped in not only understanding from founders and understanding the startups, but actually understanding how a venture studio works and how you start your own company. And during the pandemic, everything changed, right? So I don't know if that was the same for you, Stoyan, perhaps, but for me, it was a massive kind of career change. So after spending about 5 years working in different marketing departments and with different companies, I actually decided to start something again myself. So that was the time when I realized this is going to be a slow time. During COVID, a lot of people are kind of stuck inside, and I took the opportunity to kind of come back to the region. So Central Eastern Europe. I spent my time in the last couple of years between Romania, Poland. I didn't actually, haven't been in the UK that much, which is sad because I really love London. But I've decided to come back to the region, start Grai Ventures with Stefan and join Michael Chaffee in Wolf Summit, the conference you mentioned at the start.
Which is, by the way, a fantastic event, and it was such a great experience joining, and what a heart-driven team, like really caring and loving people on top of being great professionals. It's been just a blast being with you guys in and I'm not gonna pronounce this city
In
right
Wrocław.
anyway.
I mean, I don't do it justice either, but yeah, it took me a while to actually learn. I'm pretty sure I'm still mispronouncing it, but to be honest, it was yeah, the last 2 years. To be honest, Mike managed to keep the team together. So what he managed to accomplish was phenomenal. Let's not forget the last 2 years were not easy for anyone really, but I think working in the event industry makes it particularly harder than some other industries, I would say.
Absolutely. So kudos for Wolf Summit for really making wonders and miracles in these very challenging times. And I want to actually come back to, because today, Diana, we spoke about, we can talk about so many things, right? But we
Sure.
discussed it'll be great. There's so many aspiring entrepreneurs, young leaders, finishing college. I often do workshops with these type of target groups, and I can see a lot of them being confused, but the confusion doesn't come from I don't know what I want to do. It more comes from there's so many opportunities, and I'm afraid to pick and choose. So I just wonder
Yeah.
if you can give us a little bit of a, the younger version of Diana, 20 years old Diana. What did she do to navigate and choose the next step? So what
Yeah.
was your internal decision making process?
Um, I think I would lie if I said that I had some kind of framework that I would follow and a very kind of systemic process of kind of where I got to where I am today. And I'm still learning a lot. And I mean, I listened to your introduction and I thank you for the kind words, but I still have a lot of work to do. Yeah, I don't think at the success that I kind of want to be just yet, but hopefully one day. So for me, I think it's in my nature. I'm very opportunistic. So and it is true that because I managed to study in London, I was quite privileged, in my opinion, in that sense, to have access to a lot of, I guess, career options, but also what really helped me in the beginning is having conversations with people with a lot more experience than I did at the time. And what worked for me, and again, this is not, I don't think there's a secret, and I don't think there is necessarily a framework to follow, as I said. It's about trying to immerse yourself in different groups, different events. If you're young, if you're just graduating, for example, try to, even if it's like 3 to 5 months, try different things, right? Try, I had, as I said, I had like 3 different jobs at one point. From the start, from after I finished working for the first startup, I went to work in a gaming studio. That was a completely different type of marketing, which I loved, but then kind of life threw me in a different direction. And then I end up then working with Startup Bootcamp and so on, right? So try different things. I would say try to surround yourself with people that you trust, and that you can generally ask for an advice. And then you just have to think what kind of person you are in terms of your style of working and also leadership as well, and what you enjoy. Like, for example, I know my limitations and I know what I don't necessarily enjoy. And I think for me, passion is kind of the first thing that drives people, especially if you want to be an entrepreneur, I guess, or if you want to run your business. And for me, I realized I like creating stuff. I like designing things. I don't, by design, I don't mean necessarily design in the actual a sense of design, but crafting a program, creating a business at the very early stage, getting in those first customers, and growing it up to a point. When business becomes a large company, or I think the sweet spot is like maybe 15, 20 people for me. I think that's when you have a lot of processes to kind of adhere to and follow. And not that I don't like, I like structure, but that's where I kind of want to detach myself and start something again. Maybe I think some people might call it ADHD. I don't know, but it's just simply that I just love creating new stuff, and I think I'm good at creating that vision and structure in the early days. So you have to know what you're good at. You have to know what you enjoy doing. And the final thing I would say, it's also about your personality and how you like to run a business. Like there's different leadership styles, right? So for me, I always lead from within. You can lead from the front, you can lead from behind, or you can lead with your team and kind of be in the trenches with them and work with them. And they probably even forget that you are leading the team, or you are the let's say the CEO or whatever, senior management, because you want to be there with them. And I think that's kind of the leadership style that I like, and that it worked for me, right? So I think I've done some successful projects to date, so something I must have done right. So I think it's just about getting to know you, and I think that takes time. So it's all right to fail, it's all right to try different things. I'm still trying new things, by the way. I'm still trying to create some kind of like structure and find a direction for myself still.
So, those of you listening, a couple of really, really important points Diana made. If you're graduating from college right now, and even if you're in your 50s, I don't know, this is kind of a general advice, but do not be afraid to take a step, right? Like sometimes we get so blocked into what if this next thing doesn't work? Well, what if it doesn't work? You change it in 2 months or in 6 months. Like you're gonna learn stuff, you're gonna meet people. Do not be afraid to follow your guts. As Diana said, like figure out who you are, right? Like we're different. Understand your strengths, understand your kind of weaknesses and things that you're not really good at, and accept it. Hey,
I
I'm
mean,
not,
how did
you
you
know,
how did you start, Stoyan? I mean, how did you come about? This is actually I'm curious. How did you come about creating this podcast?
yeah, definitely. I mean, I will start with how did I started on my journey, just very briefly, and I'll get back to the
Yeah.
podcast. But it's just like you. I'm a bit of a passion is my driver. I'm really curious and passionate about something, and I start doing it. And sometimes it's like doesn't make sense to do this thing, right? So as you know, probably I did a bachelor and master degree in finance because I was really passionate about solving problems logically, rationally. Mathematics was a huge passion of mine in the high school and then in university. But then I realized that's not what I want to do professionally. I love to solve the problem for the fun of it, for the passion, but I would spend all my free time out of university making videos, producing movies, organizing film festivals, and being creative. So it was like, what if I take my passion about solving problems and understanding finance as something that I already have as a background and actually use that to have an edge when I get into the movie industry, the video industry. So instead of becoming a director, plenty of directors, throw a rock, there's a director in the film fields. Everybody wants to be a director. What if I become a producer and then I can manage the project, understand storytelling and creativity, and that gave me an edge. And I always like to tell to people, especially in this type of age, graduating high school, graduating college, you're not defined by the thing that you study. Don't be defined by the thing that you study. Use it as an advantage. If you're really passionate about it, go for it, try it out. But hey, you might study marketing and then say, you know what, I'm going to start my own thing. I'm going to do different things. Or I'll join a company, I'm going to do pricing or like whatever, right? You're not defined by
I
it.
mean, by the
It's just
time,
something.
yeah, and by the time, to be honest, I think this is a conversation for a different time, but the educational system has to change drastically. And I think with any degree, but probably especially marketing, by the time you graduate, a lot of the things you've done 3 years ago become obsolete. You know, the fundamentals, sure, but you can read a Philip Kotler book whenever you like. So I think putting things into practice, yeah, it is going to look a lot different from what you actually study. So
No, absolutely. There's definitely some movement, and there's some schools that are a lot more innovative and try to teach students to solve problems, to to organize projects, to do stuff, right? So these are the practical ones. Hopefully, we will see more and more of that. To finish up, Diana, because I want to focus on you and your story, but to finish up about the podcast, well,
yeah,
basically, Corona happened, right? So
yeah,
what do we do? I have all my speaking and consulting gigs being delayed or canceled all of a sudden. So should I just do nothing, or should we actually do something? And actually team up with Anya from my team. She's been in touch with you. Fantastic, fantastic person. She's been inspiring actually this podcast. But it was about, I know so many cool people like yourself, and I just, this is my strength, to get to know people and just to meet people, really cool people. I have these amazing conversations with people that nobody hears about, and I'm like, oh my god, I wish I recorded this thing. So initially it was, I just want to talk to cool people,
yeah,
you know. And hopefully the audience, people will also get inspired, and the guest will be happy, and it's like a whole, so it's something that's, this is my passion, this is what I love. I can do that all day, like Captain America, right? I can do that all day. But it's seriously like, that's what makes me happy, and it apparently creates value for other. I mean, it's episode 104, right? Like, it's less than 2 years, so you can see that. you know
no,
that's
I mean, to be
follow
honest,
your passion.
yeah, and kudos to you. It is hard to be consistent. It is easy to start something, and I think it's really hard to, it is hard to grow it, and it's hard to keep it and keep it at the level where you brought the podcast and the guests you had and the book you wrote. So I think you should be very proud.
Thank you so much, Diana. But again, we're talking about this, and I really hope that the audience gets this. When you're passionate, it doesn't mean things are going to work out from day one. And like, hey, I'm passionate about movies, and hey, Steven Spielberg is like getting me on board. To like, no, no, it's not how it works, right? But
Yeah,
but when you have the passion, and I want you to elaborate on that, it's so much easier to go through the difficult times. And I mean, even this week, I had a day that I had a whole bunch of things I have to go through. I woke up, I did not sleep well. I don't
yeah,
want to do anything, but I'm excited. I'm passionate. I know why I do it. So, I get
yeah.
myself, and it's so much easier. So, talk to me about passion. And was passion really what triggered your decisions in terms of your career? Was it always about, this just feels right in my guts, I need to try this thing out, or do you also have some sort of a process of, here's my gut, here's my heart, but what about the mind and the rational? Is that the right
Yeah,
thing to do? How do you decide what to focus on?
yeah. Um, I think by definition, I like taking risk, and I think you have to take some kind of risk. And when you are rather young, and you don't have necessarily family or kids to look after, you probably give yourself some freedom, right, to experiment. So for me, it may sound strange, but I just wanted to see the world. I wanted to travel. I wanted to meet interesting people. I wanted to be part of creating some kind of meaningful brands and products. I love exactly what you said. I love getting an interesting story out of someone, and trying to talk to them about their companies, why how they got to where they are today, right? And I just realized so many people that are probably not necessarily famous, they have such an interesting story to tell. So for me, it was about traveling, seeing the world, getting to know these people, and trying to put something meaningful out in the world. So I didn't know what I wanted to do, to be honest. And I think over the last few years, if you look at, you mentioned LinkedIn, right? Of course, there is some consistency in terms of my work and the kind of work I've done. So I do work in marketing. That always stayed with me. I didn't change from, let's say, starting as an accountant and then move to marketing and then move to finance and whatever. I had that, let's say, call it a linear path. But then in terms of the size of the companies or the nature of the companies, that always change and is very dynamic. So you talked about my age. There's no secret. I'm 27 years old, and I think it's now that I'm starting to realize, after about, I would say, almost 10 years of experimenting in different roles and projects, what I want to focus on. So I think it's never. I think we always, the way I feel about this, we want success to be now and fast, and easy. And I'm that kind of person where I need to do things always. Like for me, if people know me, they, the thing that I always say, let's not waste time. Let's not waste time. This wastes time. Do not waste time. You probably know that. And that's just who I am. And I realize, look, not everyone is like you. You have to be mindful of that when you work with other people. And then I realized you just put so much pressure on you. So for me, that passion, you always have to be true to yourself. And what do you want to do, right? What are you passionate about? And for me, it's still about creating those new, as I said in the beginning, creating those new startups, getting involved at ideating, at the very, very early stage, creating a strategy, a business plan, a brand in the beginning, an identity, and then test it out. For me, that learning phase, getting people's reaction, getting people's feedback. I mean, if we've done that with a venture that we just launched at Grai a couple of days ago. These are the things that are passion for me. And I was filling up this application for, potentially could be an award that I might get or I might not get. I don't want to jinx it, so I'm not going to say it just yet. Where the question was, what is the one thing that defines an entrepreneur, right? And you had different answers, and it was about vision and grit and hustle and passion. And I think for me it's passion, because the moment you wake up and you just simply can't leave the bed, or you just don't feel like having the same, I don't know, the same drive as you had when you started the project, then to me that's kind of a signal, and I'm like, okay, something is wrong. Doesn't mean that you have to stop, but I think you just have to stop and reflect. What is it that happened? Is it the team? Is it you? Is the market that is telling you that this is not working? What is it? Because then everything else comes. I think, the vision, you can change it, you can alter it, the great, but the passion, it has to be there. So being passionate about things, and I hope that in everything I do, you see that passion. For me, it's just, it's that kind of, I don't know when you're nervous, do you have the same sort of kind of like butterfly feeling in your stomach? I usually don't get nervous, but when I do, I have that feeling like I just can't eat. And when I work on a project that I really like, I have this feeling the entire day that that I can't have it with any other projects that I don't like. I don't know. For me, that's just a way of feeling that this is okay. This is still something that I want to do. This is still something that drives me.
I can eat all the time. I never have this feeling. Yeah, so that's for sure. But I see where you're coming from, and when you're talking about passion, getting back to what we discussed at the beginning is, what if you're passionate about many things at the same time? How do you personally decide what to focus on?
Um, and I'm still learning to focus. I think one of the things I've realized is that after you finish experimenting with all those different projects, at one point you have to start focusing. I actually had a very interesting conversation with I'm working on an upcoming white paper about media for equity investments, and I'm interviewing a lot of founders and a lot of CEOs of large media groups, so different perspectives. And this founder told me 2 days ago, when he started his company 4 or 5 years ago, I hope I'm not going to butcher what he said, but he said basically, we were trying to spread ourselves 1 kilometer wide and being 1 centimeter deep. Now, 5 years later, we want to be 1 kilometer deep and just 1 centimeter wide, which is kind of, I guess, the point he's making is that try, after you experimented, after you've learned what you like, try to focus on the things that you like, try to dig deeper into what you like. And for me right now, this is still something that I think I'm putting kind of structure in my life still. I think with COVID in the last couple of years, look, I mean, let's just be honest. It's not, we're talking about career, but I think you have to talk about your personal life, your mental health as well. And I don't speak enough about this. It wasn't an easy time. It's always easy to judge, right? As you said, like, oh, LinkedIn and articles, but people struggle. And I think I would love to, to have this kind of more honest conversations. And I'm lucky that I have friends that are very open and we were able to share. But I had many moments when I was just thinking, what am I doing with my life? And not being able to see the people you love, or being stuck inside, or as you said, struggling because your work was affected. And then you have to think about even maybe survival, and even more so when you have a team behind you that you have to support, right? It's not easy. So I think after 2 years of working in the region, and not to mention probably for me was everything was new. I never worked in Romania before. I clearly never worked in Poland before. So coming back from with almost like, if you like, a Western mentality and ways of working, when in London everything is so fast paced, everything, right? And I was just to add that I was living in Canary Wharf. Now, if that wasn't enough to be in London, to be in the center of finance, where when you wake up at 8 in the morning, the queue going up the escalators to One Canada Square is probably like 400 meters long. People have a different way, different style. So for me, it was about, okay, starting a new company, going back to a country where I never worked before, and trying to basically kind of I was a stranger in my own country, you know what I mean? And it was hard. It was hard to kind of immerse yourself again, have a group of people that you can trust, which you haven't had before. But yeah, I think 2 years forward, things are looking much better now, right? So, and I still have that drive. I think for me, I have to be very careful what I say, because this is live and this is recorded, right? So I don't want to. We'll see what happens in the next couple of years or so. But if you see me going back to work for a large company, or maybe that means that something just didn't work out as I wanted. Because look, this may sound weird, but you can always go and find a job, right? It might not be your dream job, but you can always go and find another place to work. So you shouldn't be afraid of being unemployed. Today with the opportunities we have in the digital world, you can, especially with COVID that accelerated the whole digital revolution, you can just probably sit at home and you just have to, just have a conversation with yourself and you're going to be able to find something. Starting a new company and trying to navigate that's hard. So yeah, if things don't work out, if you see that I'm changing my job in the next 2 years or so, then yeah.
We'll definitely call you and see what happened. But Diana, I just want to say, I just want to praise you for being open and talking about the difficulties. And I think we have to talk a lot more about this. I don't know about you. When I was starting my own entrepreneur journey, I would read all these books about personal development and success stories, and it all sounded fantastic and great, and it's glamour and it's fun, and you have this, right? As an entrepreneur, you have all these kind of high moments and achievements and milestones and everything, but there's a large proportion of the time that's actually really difficult. You have the days that you said you are, why am I even doing this? I'm pushing on these things for 3 years. I don't know how to pay the people that work for me. Like, you have all these kind of moments of difficulties, and we kind of try to keep them in our inner circle and not talk about them. And we create a very skewed picture, twisted picture of what it really takes to build a career, that being fully successful in what you're passionate about. It does take a lot of time, and it does take sacrifices, and you might have to miss the wedding of a best friend, or the trip with your friends that everybody's going to, and you might have sleepless nights. And most of the entrepreneurs I talk to also on this podcast, some of them unicorn founders, the founder of Reebok, those kind of people, right?
Yeah.
They're like, they tell you the story, and it's like, wow, it took you 20 years to finally make it. Makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's the way the problem is, it is the way media portrays people that end up indeed being successful. And it's either the story of a hustler, or then it's a story of a genius person that now here's where they are. And we're talking about money and how much the last funding round was, its size, and it's all about, yeah, it's all about the kind of the shiny stuff that you get when you are getting closer to the finish line. And that's the problem. I think that's the problem. It's inherent. It's inherent in the industry and the way we talk about it and the media. And most publications these days, a story to make it to the press, it needs to have at least a minimum six-digit number in the headline, right, to be featured. And I think, as I mentioned before, for me, yes, I do work a lot. And I know that it's not about how much you work. I think you have to work smart. But I do, for me, because I like what I do, it is pretty much my life. So it's not easy. It's not, you do have to make sacrifices. So that's again probably one of those, let's say, added to your checklist when you think about what you want to do. What kind of work, what kind of life you want to have. And for example, I had the opportunity to work in the US for a short while. And I think, of course, US is such a, it's a massive country, and then you have different states are different probably in terms of their people's mindset. So there's one thing to work in New York. I was working in Austin, in Texas. So people were way more chilled and laid back. Lovely, lovely city, by the way. But in the US, that's the mentality. You leave to work. Right. And then in a lot of the Western countries, there is this fast pace. So I think, when you want to start something new, you have to know that you're not going to have the 9 to 5 job. And I love what you said about your guest, the founder of Freebook as well. And I'm inspired by reading other people's biography. Of course, even those books, as close as they want to be to the reality, there's always some kind of drama or a nice story that you have to start with because you can't have it any other way. But I loved Shoe Dog. I love the story of the founder of Nike, and I mean, to me, that's the perfect way of describing how much you have to hustle to create something new, something meaningful, because you can create something new. Anyone can create something, we're all creators, but I think something meaningful. And Michelle Obama, amazing story as well of her support to President Obama, and how her career changed and how creative she was. The story of Netflix, I mean, if you read the first chapter, again, you don't know how true this is, but the guy was essentially pitching new ideas every single morning to investors on the way to work in their car, like crazy ideas. Every morning was a new idea, a new idea, a new idea, till they landed on Netflix. And Netflix in the beginning wasn't what Netflix is today, right? So
No, absolutely. And I just love the point that you made, Diana, about we should maybe start with first getting a clear picture about where we want to be, not just career wise, but what is the kind of life that we want to build, and start building it backwards. And it might not be tomorrow, right? It might be in 4 years in the future or so on. Like, what is the kind of, how would you want everything to be? I mean, now everybody's talking about unicorns and like, let's build unicorns. Why? Do you have a good reason to build it? There's people that I just know that this is what excites them. This is really who they are. Great, go for it. But do you know how much work and stress and all those kind of things come with building a unicorn, and sacrifices and everything? Is that you, or did you just hear that on the news and just kind of sounds cool and let's do it? What is the kind of life that you want to build? Do you want to
yeah,
be the working 30 hours, chilling, and just having a good family time kind of person? Great. Then try to build your career in a way that you get there. Or you want to
yeah,
be super ambitious, you really love to work because you love what you do and you want to spend more hours. Where do you want to be?
yeah. I mean, tell me who would tell you that they don't want to run a company that is valued at over $1 billion. Everyone, I guess, that
I
works
don't.
in the startup. Okay.
You know what I mean?
I was
I think there's a
I was
lot of
about to say
people.
everyone that has a startup, everyone that probably creates a new company has that kind of, perhaps, has that, at least inside, you probably want that company to be successful and to grow as fast as possible. And talking about headlines, and I think most recently we've seen some corrections in the market in terms of this company valuations. I don't want to go down the VC investment route conversation, but there's one thing to be successful and get to $1 billion valuation, and to actually look at that company, cash flow, and you see some meaningful numbers. And there's one way to reach $1 billion valuation in a couple of years with companies continue to be unprofitable. So I think there's a lot still of corrections that are to be done in the market. But I think for me, it's really not about. I don't think it's about the unicorn status. If you think actually about Grai and the way we are approaching building these companies, of course we want them all to succeed, and if possible to have multi-million-dollar valuation. But it's not about that. It's about being that's the way we work. It's about being very strategic in the way you approach building a company, identifying from the start an opportunity and a potential buyer, so that in the next 5-6 years you look at a good, you know, modest but good exit, because that's what allows you to then work on another company, build another company, and so on. So I think it's about what you want as well, as you said, and what kind of lifestyle you want to have. But yeah.
No, absolutely. And I'm actually curious now to ask you this question. If everything goes by plan, how do you see yourself 5, 10 years in the future? Like the boldest vision. Do you see yourself working with the same type of intensity, or do you think you're going to be more chill and kind of balanced
I,
in a way?
I don't see that far in the future. No. I mean, um, I don't think I will ever be able to stop or relax 100% ever. I think regardless. And I think, again, actually, there was a point that I wanted to make earlier as well. I think if you are trying to be an entrepreneur, if you're in for the money, then, sorry to break it to you, but most founders are broke and you're probably better off just having a nice job. I think in the short run, you have a way more success. So I don't know where I'm going to be in 10 years. What I want to do in 10 years is to still have the health and the ability, mental and physical, to still work with other ambitious people on creating their brand, growing the products. And I don't think I will ever run away from being a marketeer. That's still who I am. I just happen that I love the strategizing part. So pairing that marketing and branding expertise with, okay, does this make sense? Is this feasible? Is this commercial? Is this desirable? Would people buy it? Let's sit down, create a plan. How do you get to this market? Because actually, we don't talk enough about this. Marketing, it is one of the main reasons a lot of companies fail. I think it's just because, investors would, and that was always the narrative. You have to have a good product. You have to see growth. You have to see traction. Have you validated your product to market? Great. You get a bit of seed funding. But then a lot of the companies actually, especially if you are a direct-to-consumer company, a lot of the companies fail because either there's a significant marketing knowledge gap in the company, or simply you can't reach the people that you need after you pass that chasm, right? So you've got your early adopters, you've got your, let's say, 10,000 people. Okay, now you need to get to the mass market. And I feel like startup founders, you still have to think about your marketing and even your branding from the early days when you start. So I still want to work. I still want to work in the industry. I still want to be around in the next 10 years. I don't think I'm going to retire, regardless of how all these companies go. I don't think I'm ever going to retire. I would love to be a more active investor myself. Absolutely. I think, especially in the region, we don't have a professional experience association of business angels. I think the business angel mentality is still kind of quite young and nascent in the industry. So I would love to see more founders coming back to the region, investing. I would love, I mean, for me, it would be an honor to be able to have that capital available to support other founders.
I'm just imagining now 123 years old Diana, just putting together all this.
123 years old. Okay, no. Yeah, I
And
don't think I'm going to reach 75, but yeah.
And look, healthcare, health tech, all these kind of things are evolving. So let's like, I think there's a brighter future on that side, but let's not go there. What I want to actually sort of point out is observational. Something that I can see from what you're speaking is, and I hope you guys listening can kind of catch those kind of things. She's not sure what exactly she's gonna do, but she knows what she loves to do, which is, I mean, marketing. I want to build these things. I want to build these networks. I want to support people with branding, marketing. So this is something to for you to also have in mind. Maybe you don't know exactly. I want to work with big company or this or that. Okay, what are some things that you're really passionate about? When you find them, you might get involved into different type of projects and things, and you don't know today what kind of opportunities will show up in front of you, right? But you just take the next step, and that's something that I feel like many people, especially in their early 20s, are really struggling with. What should be the best next step? What if I don't find my dream job? And they're kind of stuck. They don't make any decision because they're kind
Yeah,
of
but there's a lot of pressure. I think there's a lot, that's the problem. There's a lot of pressure, and there's the media pressure, right? When you look at all the, people in the early 20s creating all these companies. And I think, again, we talked about this. I don't want to go back to the point
no,
we
but
made,
I
but
think I
there's a
think
lot
I
of
think we
pressure.
haven't. I think we haven't. I think it's a good point. I want you to talk about it because there's pressure on it in terms of expectations, societal expectations.
Yes.
There's the parents, right?
Yep.
So talk to me about that. And how did you, as a young Eastern European woman in London, deal with all this pressure when you were in your early 20s?
Um, I mean, I actually had so interestingly enough, I in London, I maybe another point to add to is that I worked and I still work in an industry that is still male dominated, right? But I don't. I was maybe lucky enough, if you like, or I'm pretty sure it's also the way I present myself, and I may sound a bit more mature than my age, that people do take me quite seriously. But it is sometimes, I've heard from other female founders or other my colleagues in the industry where, first of all, it's a struggle to be taken serious when you're young, and then of course you're a woman and you're in an industry where you don't see that many women. But in London, I think the pressure was more, I built that pressure for myself. The pressure wasn't necessarily coming from, I mean, your friends, if they are your friends, they won't put pressure on you. So it's usually the pace in which you're working. And then at work, yeah, I mean, every organization has its own culture, right? But then I was pretty lucky to work in organizations where I think they value you as an individual and they invested in you, right, to grow. The pressure was, I put the pressure on me. So I think there's another thing to say here, when try to give yourself a break sometimes, and I'm just kind of saying this out loud for myself so I can hear myself, because I'm I'm the one judging everything that I do. People tend to tell me, okay, just try to take a break, try to think through, try to be a bit more relaxed. And I put the pressure on me. With my parents, I think I just soon realized that they just need to know that I'm okay, everything is okay, not go into the details of what I do, because I think that's when you scare them, right? When you try to explain to them things that, like they don't even, simply because they were not exposed to that kind of environment, they wouldn't understand. Then that kind of creates a lot of questions in their mind. Like, why aren't you working for, I don't know, a Fortune 500 company? This kind of questions, right? Like, why don't you want to have a more stable life? I seem like you're hurting yourself, like you're doing this because you don't want to. So pressure, I think it's a big topic, and I think we have to we have to reflect always about who's putting that pressure on you, because sometimes it could be yourself, and I know in my case I'm the harshest critique in everything that I do.
Yeah, that's a good point. Who's putting the pressure on you? And at the end of the day, it's your life. Yes, you have to deal with all these expectations and pressure, but you also have to take ownership and say, hey, I decide, and it's on me, and I got to take ownership. I might make mistakes, but I have to communicate with the people who are most related and who are part of it. And I'm feeling calm inside that whatever I do, it's on me, taking the full
Yeah.
ownership. And I'm wondering, Diana, and that'll be my kind of a final question. Was there any specific, you talk a lot about experience and how experience made you find your path, but was there any specific experiences in terms of events, or like you went to this conference, or you joined the course, or you got a coach or a mentor, something that triggered this clarity around finding who you are and what do you want to do?
Um, I think there's been several milestones, moments, if you like, in my life. The thing is, I think where you are as an individual, it's kind of the result of tiny little moments in your life, right, that define you and made you who you are. I, the fact that I managed to live and work in 6 different countries, which are fundamentally different from one another culture-wise, that really shaped a lot in the way I would approach a project, the way you behave around people, especially in business, and how important it is to respect their culture and to know what they appreciate and what they like. I think we often take that for granted, because working in Qatar and working in the US, different people, different environment, right? It is true that a lot of the projects, and this now obviously you probably have seen me posting a lot about media for equity, and we've done the white paper last year. The white paper, this is the perfect probably example of a project of how it triggered that passion for me to realize, look, I mean, at the end of the day, this is still venture capital, this is still investments, this is still the industry that I've been working in for the last 7 years. So it's not anything different. It's just that I realized this is a space which gives me the ability to pair my marketing expertise and knowledge with the investments and the industry in which I've been working for the last 5, 6 years. But it all started with a research, right? At the time, I didn't sit down to think, okay, in a year from now, we want to run the largest network of media for equity funds and work with some amazing companies to raise these investments and grow their brand internationally. We were, pretty curious about the concept, and I think this, you can call it luck. I like to call it strategy, but it was a concept that people don't talk about it enough. And I think when you are onto something that it can add value, but it hasn't been covered enough, exhausted enough in terms of businesses, media, things that people know about, that gives you an edge, right? And 12 months forwards, we are basically on the verge of launching the network and working with some amazing funds that have a really bold vision, working in a sector which I love and I think is changing drastically, doing things that we still love and I love, which is creating these businesses. and helping founders grow their business. It's, hopefully it's all coming together. But yeah, well, I think we need to have another conversation a year from now to see.
No, for sure we have to. Diana, thank you so much for this conversation, for being really honest and humble, and sharing all this the ups and downs, and the inner process of you navigating your own path.
I
Just
hope it
to
was
kind of
useful.
just to wrap it up, I'm actually, if you can share with the audience, where could they kind of follow you, get in touch, maybe work with you? Where could they reach out and be in touch with you?
Sure. So I think we are broadcasting this across different channels. So if you're watching this on LinkedIn, then it's easy. Just click on my face and then you can see my LinkedIn profile. You can just drop me a message. I think we just have to be a bit more specific, right? So in terms of what I can do, if you are a startup founder, primarily in targeting the mass market audience, if you're a direct to consumer company, if you're interested to know more about this type of investments, just drop me a message. If you are a media group who would like to understand how this investment work and essentially bring it inside your company to diversify your portfolio, same thing. Either drop me a message on LinkedIn, or I also have my website, still work in progress, but if you just follow at dflorescu.com, you can see some of the projects I've done before, some of the conferences and events I was part at and I was speaking at, and you can also just email me directly via the website.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you're hosting a podcast, if you are having a conference or a corporate event, you might want to reach out to this lady because she's going to kick ass. That's what I can say. Thank you so much for everybody for listening, for
Thank you for
being
the
with
kind
us.
words, Dorian. Thank you.
Well, I mean it, Diana. I mean it. And I know whatever you get into, that's why we probably also work together so well. It's like whatever you get into, you're engaged, you're positive, you put your heart and soul if you say yes to it. So I couldn't recommend you anymore. So thanks everyone for
Thank you.
being here with us. And make sure to reach out to Diana, follow her. And if you enjoyed the episode, obviously share it with a friend, with somebody who will find value in it, and make sure to subscribe to Productivity Mastery on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast, or anywhere else where you can find podcasts. It was a pleasure being here with you, and I'll see you again next week, where we're going to have the founder of Typeform. So it's going to be another story with the ups and downs, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy that one as well. So thanks so much, and see you again at the next episode.